Lesson 11. Justice Not Done. The Hanging of Elizabeth Workman. On June 19, 1873, Elizabeth Workman was hanged in the yard at the Sarnia jail. She was executed for the killing of her husband, James Workman. Workman's execution is notable since it was contrary to the actual recommendation of the trial jury and contrary to public opinion. Not only was this unusual, but Workman was the only woman hanged in Canadian history contrary to the recommendation of the jury. Why was the recommendation of mercy disregarded in this case? As Garfield makes clear in explaining his approach to studying the case, it is important to understand the crime and the reasons for the punishment. It is necessary to understand the historical context of the time, the attitudes towards women, men, domestic assault, race, class, excessive drinking, and so on. The fact that the new barber in town, Samuel Butler, was black, and that there were rumors of a sexual relationship between Butler and Elizabeth Workman was significant in the context of rural or small-town Ontario at the time, where there was a prejudice against black people, to say little of the scandal of a supposed adulterous interracial sexual relationship. Another important element was the workmen's socio-economic place in the society and how this shaped their interactions with the law and the state. James Workman was an able-bodied male, so what social assistance programs were available at the time would not usually have applied to him or to his family. If he were physically capable of work, he should be working. As Garfield also notes, the legal subordination of women under Canadian law was harshest upon the working-class women. Wealthier or upper-class women had connections with important families in government and law, which could aid them in their problems. As we have seen in an earlier lesson, courts were not always chivalrous in terms of criminal court outcomes for women prosecuted for crimes. And as Garfield notes, spousal battery cases rarely came before the courts. This was likely not because this did not happen, but rather in the context of the society, either charges were not laid, or if laid, the cases did not make it to the court system. To some extent, this might have had to do with the contemporary views of subordination of women to men within the household, and the place of the state in regulating what went on in the household. Garfield references a police magistrate, or judge, from the Hamilton Police Court, who claimed that he always favored the position of the man when a domestic assault case was brought forward by the wife claiming that her husband had assaulted her. The article gives a full description of the events of the killing of James Workman. For a homicide case, the trial was remarkably swift. Workman's court-appointed defense counsel was only appointed the evening before the trial began, and the trial itself lasted only 2 days. She was found guilty of murder, but the jury recommended the use of the royal prerogative of mercy, a discretionary power based on the traditional power of the monarchy to grant mercy. This would have spared Elizabeth Workman from the hanging gallows. Examining the arguments for and against clemency or mercy, it is noted that the trial judge simply argued that Workman committed the crime and had to pay the price according to the law of the land. Letters supporting the use of the royal prerogative of mercy, written by future Prime Minister Alexander Mackenzie, tellingly stated that a contributing factor to the entire case was that both the Workmans were of a, quote, very low class. He also noted that when the trial began, Workman had no representation, and so the trial had to be delayed a day to get her defense counsel. This hardly helped the prospect of Workman having an equal chance as the state prosecution. Workman's lower-class status and the fact that it was widely assumed she had had an adulterous interracial relationship were also likely contributing factors to the judge's attitudes towards her.